Have you ever just stopped and wondered, how did I become, well, me? From your very first thought to your most deeply held beliefs, it wasn't just a random series of events. It was a journey, a predictable, structured journey that every single one of us takes. So today, we're going to map out that exact journey, the incredible story of how a person develops from the very first spark of life all the way to our final reflections.
All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start where it all begins, with prenatal development. Then we'll cover those first wobbly steps of early childhood, and then look at how we learn to actually think and make sense of the world. From there, we dive into the teenage search for identity, and finally, we'll explore the vast, complex landscape of adulthood. Okay, so our story actually begins way before our first breath, the prenatal period. This is the foundation. It's the blueprint upon which everything else in our lives is built. It's a time of absolutely mind-blowing transformation that really sets the stage for a lifetime.
And this whole initial phase is just a whirlwind of construction, and it's broken down into 3 key stages. First up, you've got the germinal stage. This is the first 2 weeks, just a period of rapid cell division. Think of it like pouring the concrete foundation for a house. Then comes the embryonic stage from 2 to 8 weeks. This is where all the major systems, the heart, the spine, the brain start to form. The blueprints are literally being drawn up. And finally, the fetal stage. This covers the last 7 months, and it's all about growth and finishing touches, getting everything ready for the big debut.
But, and this is so important, this whole process is incredibly delicate. The placenta, it's not some perfect, impenetrable shield. So many external things can have a huge impact. A mother's nutrition, her stress levels, any illnesses, or even exposure to environmental toxins. All of these can influence development during this absolutely critical construction phase.
So once a child enters the world, that's when the real work of connecting truly begins. This next chapter is all about building the essential foundations, the emotional bonds and the language skills that allow us to interact with, well, everyone and everything around us.
And maybe the single most important development here is attachment. Now, this isn't just about liking someone. This is that deep, powerful, emotional bond that forms between an infant and their caregiver. It's really our first relationship, and it becomes the blueprint for how we form connections for the rest of our lives. So, how do you know that incredible bond is actually forming? Well, one of the clearest signs is something called separation anxiety. When a baby gets really upset because their parent leaves the room, that's not a bad thing. It's actually a super healthy sign that a strong, secure attachment has been built.
And at the exact same time, kids are tackling the massive challenge of language. And it is a fascinating process of trial and error. You see these 2 mistakes that are kind of opposites, but they're related. There's overextension, where one word gets stretched to mean too many things, like calling the family cat, the neighbor's dog, and a raccoon on TV all doggy. Then there's underextension, where a word is too specific, like the word doll only means they're one special doll and no others count.
So, as a child's vocabulary starts to explode, so does their ability to understand the world. Their little minds are just working overtime, trying to figure out all the rules of reality. This whole stage is about that incredible journey of cognitive development. It's not just about learning facts, it's about learning how to think.
The psychologist Erikson had this brilliant idea that our personality is basically forged by solving a series of life puzzles. He said that at each stage of childhood, we're wrestling with a core question, even if we can't say it out loud. First, it's, is my world predictable and safe? Answering yes to that builds trust. Then it's, can I do things myself? Which builds a sense of autonomy. How we answer these early questions really shapes who we become.
Then there's Jean Piaget, another giant in this field, who came up with a really revolutionary idea. He said our thinking doesn't just get better, it completely transforms. He laid out these 4 distinct stages, starting with the sensory motor stage, where babies learn through touching and tasting, all the way up to the formal operational stage, where we can finally grapple with big, abstract ideas like justice or infinity.
Now, a huge milestone in Piaget's theory is getting the concept of conservation. This is the simple idea that physical things stay the same even if they change shape. So if you pour water from a short, fat glass into a tall, skinny one, it's still the same amount of water, right? Well, for young kids, that is a really, really hard concept to grasp.
So why is it so hard for them? Well, one of the main reasons is something called centration. A young child's brain kind of gets stuck. It fixates on just one thing, in this case, the height of the water. They see the water level is higher, and they can't process the other crucial fact that the glass is also way thinner.
And the other piece of the puzzle here is irreversibility. The child literally can't picture reversing the action in their head. They can't mentally pour the water back into the first glass to see that it's the same. It's like their brain doesn't have a rewind button for actions yet, so to them, the change must be real.
And once a kid masters that kind of mental flexibility, it helps usher in the next big phase, the confusing, complicated, and totally transformative teenage years. And this entire period is really defined by one central driving quest. Who am I? That's it. That is the question. According to Erikson, this is the fundamental challenge of adolescence: identity versus confusion. It's this intense period of exploring different roles, trying on different personalities, figuring out what you believe in, all to forge a stable, coherent sense of who you actually are. But here's the thing. This huge search for identity isn't happening in a nice, quiet vacuum. Oh no. It's happening in the middle of a storm of other changes. A teenager is dealing with a roller coaster of self-esteem, they're building their own moral compass, navigating intense peer groups, and their brain and body are going through massive, massive changes, all at the same time. It's a lot. From there, we finally enter the longest phase of our entire journey. In adulthood, it's not just one long, flat road. It's more like a series of distinct chapters, and each one comes with its own unique challenges, its own transitions, and its own big questions. And Erikson's theory continues right through adulthood, showing how our core questions just keep evolving. In early adulthood, we're asking, shall I share my life with someone? That's the whole intimacy versus isolation puzzle. Then, in middle adulthood, the focus shifts outward to our legacy. Will I create something of real value? That's the challenge of generativity versus self-absorption.
You know, another great way to look at this is through Daniel Levinson's theory, which he called the seasons of a man's life. He saw adulthood not as one big chunk of time, but as distinct seasons: early, middle, and late adulthood. And each season has its own unique character and, crucially, transitional periods between them, which, can sometimes lead to what we call a midlife crisis.
And all of this entire journey, brings us to the final question. It's the culmination of Erikson's stages, really the culmination of the human experience. In our late adulthood, we look back over the decades and we ask ourselves, have I lived a full life? Answering that question with a sense of peace, with integrity, that is the final developmental task. It's the moment we find meaning and the unique story we've written for ourselves.